Hi, everybody. Beth asked me to share a couple of thoughts on inviting people to church and all of that good stuff. I guess, in some ways, I guess I have a natural knack for that, being extroverted and whatnot. But first, I wanted to thank you for serving at Kids Place. We love it because we can tell from our kids that they know God, and that's so much because of your hearts and your desire to help and just do what you feel called to do. So thanks for stepping up. So inviting people to church, it reminds me of a few that I have invited. First, several years ago, I met a guy named Mike at Montrose Park. We were both taking our dogs out, and he had a great sense of humor, and we just started joshing about and just telling stupid stories and got to know each other a bit through the dogs. And then, I kind of sensed that there was some faith there, and I invited them, and they actually came. Mike and his wife Angela, they came to church, and it was very precious because they started attending, and not long after that, there was one service after the Pastor Scott's message was over and the announcements, and we stayed after. They were really, really moved, and I got to see and pray with them and see them saved, and it was very special to me. It made it all worthwhile. Sometimes it takes time to get people to come, and you can get discouraged, but instead I say pray, because God is obviously bringing these people into our lives to bring them to himself, to bring them to heaven, to bring them to church, and to help them touch other people. And it's a great chain reaction that I love being a part of. So Mike and Angela, they then moved to Buffalo, and they're just great people and miss them dearly. And it's not only inviting people to church, it's also being a light. And I remember this one guy. I do subtitling during the week when I'm not working at the church. And one time I was at one of the local movie studios just working on a movie with a guy. I think his name might have been Mike as well. So we worked on the same film at the same desk for a couple of hours, and we kept talking, and he just shared about his life, going through a divorce and having a little girl that he loved to bits, and it just felt really, really special to me, like I was on holy ground. I mean, I'd never met him before, and he was so open, and he was talking about the biggest challenges in his life, and I kept sensing like the Holy Spirit would have been telling me, like, hey, why don't you ask to pray for him. And I waited and waited, and then the project was over, but then we ended up stepping out to the parking lot together because he was leaving, and I finally, by his car, mustered up the courage, and I said, like, listen, do you mind if I pray for you? And he's just said, like, I'm not that kind of a guy. And instead of taking it personally, I didn't. And I just said, like, okay, have a good one. And it was great to hang out. And I had this great freedom because the truth is that when we ask to pray for somebody or when we invite somebody to church, that's not about us. We don't need to take it personally. That's between Jesus and that person. And it's just such a privilege to see. And if they say no, no harm done. None whatsoever. So I had this great freedom of not feeling responsible for his soul or anything. That's God's job. And it was just a very special moment, and I'm glad that I got to participate and see a seed was planted. Guarantee you, it's been a year and a half, maybe, so guarantee you he's already met other people that go to church, and the Holy Spirit is telling them other things to do. Maybe ask if they can pray for him, and maybe his back is against the wall and he really needs it, and he will just soften up and come to God. And that'll be a great reward. We're all working towards the same goal, and it doesn't have to be that glorious moment of salvation. And then one more couple, Scott and Jenna, they're at the church now, and they're just great friends of ours. Our kids go to the same school at Fremont, and I started seeing Scott all the time because he was bringing his daughter Sarah to school. And we just talked, and it became evident real quickly that they had faith, that they were believers. And Scott just said, like, yeah, we've been looking for a church, but we really haven't found one, and we haven't been really active. I'm like, dude, we got a church for you. You gotta come. And I invited him probably 4 or 5 times, and then one Sunday they came, and watch out. It turned out awesome, because right now, you guys are probably sitting in there, right? Because you serve at Kids Place, and I play with Scott, and they're just in our small group, and they're some of our best new friends on the whole world. And all that took was that invite, just saying like, hey, we're here, we're local, we're close by, and you can see us on the website. That's an easy thing to tell people, like, yeah, I go to church. And then you just say cvchurch.com, and they'll see so much there, and then it lowers the threshold of coming. So there's many tools. You're not alone at this. And, so love having those guys at church. And then there's one more story I want to quickly share with you before we're done with this quick greeting. And that's our neighbor who just moved here. She went through a divorce and has a couple of teenage boys, and there's that strain and stress of having difficult conversations, and I had invited her a couple of times already, but then she came over just out of the blue. She was knocking at the door, neighbor stuff, and the next thing you know, it just popped in my head like, new series starting this Sunday, having difficult conversations. She's going through a divorce. Like, it's a no-brainer. So I'm like, hey, you gotta come tomorrow morning at 10:30. It's having difficult conversations, and you're just going through this, and you've been saying how hard it is to have these conversations. You'll get all the tools you'll ever need. And she showed up. She came the very next day, and that was the first Sunday of the new series, and I haven't seen her since. But I'm not going to get discouraged. What do we do when that happens? We keep asking and we keep praying. I mean, that's the deal. We're not alone in this. It's a partnership with God and a very special privilege. So think this through. It's simple. It's never personal. And when you do it once, it gets easier every time, and you get more excited every time. And you just sense this collaboration with God that brings you closer to Him. That's just really precious. So thanks again for serving at Kids Place. Start inviting people, and remember, it's God's work, and we get to participate. What an honor. Love you guys. Bye.